Welcome to Speak as One. I'm Julie Corrieth. Today we have Meghan Stabler here. Welcome, Meghan.
Thank you, Julie.
Yeah, and how are you today?
Peachy would be the word I use.
Peachy.
Yeah, peachy.
Well, good. We're out of peach season, but that's okay.
Hey, it's a Southern saying, and I'm happy.
Yeah, that's right. Well, thank you for being on with us.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've talked before about mental health and just so much of your story and what you've spoken about. I just know that there are so many people that need to hear it, and so appreciate you being on here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Where do you want to begin? What do you want to know?
Well, I always love to go to like where you were raised and how you were raised, and specifically when you started noticing mental health, if it was when you were younger or...
Yeah, so I got one of those weird accents, even though I'm here in Texas. You know, I've been in the States for 32 years, but I'm born in England a long, long time ago in the 60s. So raised in England by two wonderful parents, somewhat religious, I'll put it that way. Two sisters, both younger than me. Born in the north of England, so very direct people, very, will tell you how they feel and what they see. And then we moved to the south. My father was an architect. Moved to the south, and then, I went through the challenges of trying to identify who I was as a person without being able to put any words to it, just knowing that there was something underlying that was different. So,
how old were you when you started feeling like that?
6, 7. I mean, very much seeing and spending more time with my girlfriends than my boyfriends. And it's this, when you try to explain, surprise, being trans to somebody, they're like, well, what is that, right? And gender identity is essentially what's between your ears. It's how you identify, as opposed to sexual orientation, being straight, being gay, being bi, which is who you are attracted to, that you want to go to bed with, that, it's between the legs, technically. What I was dealing with was believing that my body was going through changes that my brain was not believing were the right changes. So my girlfriends, when they went through puberty, why am I not going through the same thing? What's going on? And people may look at that and go, well, surely you understand, right? This was the 60s, early 70s, so no internet, right, that you could go to. So there's no way to research. There's no words, right, that we have today for trans youth or other trans people. They can easily Google, or it's in society, or it's on the TV and the media. It wasn't back then. So
when your girlfriends were going through puberty, you were not?
I was going through eventually male puberty.
I'm sorry. Yes, sorry.
Yeah, and so my body was changing in a way that my brain viewed as being incongruent. Those are the words that I would use now. Back then, it was like I just hated what was going on. I didn't know. So I wouldn't say that there was any mental angst or challenges. It was more trying to understand what was happening or not happening to me and why, and not wanting to ask questions to rock the boat, to feel that I wasn't going to be loved if I said to somebody, hey, there's something going on, I don't know what it is. Because you couldn't put your thumb on it. You couldn't say what it was. So you didn't know how to communicate with your parents or anything like that. So you sort of kept it all inside.
Sounds very confusing.
It is. And I think it's confusing even in today's world for people that are identifying as gender nonconforming or trans, or just dealing with a lot of different issues. Today it's do I come out and admit that there is something going on and try and get help, but who do I go to get that help? And if I do come out and I talk about it, am I going to be ostracized? Am I going to be othered? Am I going to be seconded? You're wrong, you can't be right about this, right? So I kept it within, right? So that mental anguish was really just pushing her down and saying, okay, well, this is who I am meant to be, but this is who I can't be. But to keep the love that I had from my family, I will conform and walk along with what's needed. So I didn't have a lot of friends at school, right? So when you think about kids growing up, friendships and stuff, I had a couple of close friends. I had a couple of very close girlfriends. But I didn't have a lot of close friends that even when I left school, I maintained contact or relationship with, because I never wanted to pull anybody close, because then they would see the real me, and that would risk, right? So mental anguish, mental stress, I think, was making sure that I suppressed who Meghan was in essence and tried to conform to who he was to fit in with the views, the opinions, and the expectations of everybody else, family, friends that were around me.
Society.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and society, yeah.
Yeah. Did you ever have feelings of, I wish I could wear women's clothing, or I'd love to paint my nails, or I wish my hair was longer, or
Yeah, no. So I had never, ever worn women's clothing.
Mhm.
And some people say, well, surely you must have worn women's clothing at some point before you transitioned. The answer was no, because it was his body that would be wearing those clothes. And if you're looking in the mirror, you're seeing his body in something. And that wasn't me. The me that I viewed was as beautiful as you are, right? And I couldn't be that. And just by putting those clothes on, it wouldn't be me, it'd still be him, and it wasn't right from my own perspective.
Yeah.
So I didn't go through any of that. Now, what I did go through was jealousy, right? That my friend Jane Brown or Amanda Pearson, who I've only just gotten back in contact with, believe it or not, in 2022, were going through the changes, and they were becoming beautiful women, right? And it was that jealousy of that. And then walking through life, when I did get into the work world, of being an executive who knew about me, and then having a lot of women and men working in my organizations, and trying not to over-compliment as the perceived guy, saying, wow, your hair looks fantastic, where do you get it done? That's a weird thing for a guy to say, isn't it? Sort of thing. So I had to, again, be reserved and hold myself back on those things. But no, I never experimented, never tried anything to women's clothes, and not until I really started my transition. And then it's trying to find things that fit somebody of my orca size.
Right. Well, so then you were raised by parents that you clearly love. And so then did you go off to college, and what was your life like, and when did you decide to make this decision? And
Yeah. So the answer to part of that question is no, I didn't go off to college, right? I had been in and around the early days of computers. Even when I was at school, I was in and around science and technology. I believed that I was a great student in a brand new school system that was more American. We're going to let the kids who can really get on and do it learn by themselves, and the kids that need help, the teacher would spend time with. And so overachieving, playing a ton of sports, doing all those things. But I really got into computers. And, it was a time in the UK when the economy was faltering, unemployment was getting higher, a lot of societal type issues were happening. And during the summer holiday, I decided to look for and apply for a computer job. And I got offered the position. It was in London. I wasn't in London. And so as this sort of 17-year-old who couldn't drive at this point in time in the UK, I'd be getting up early, walking to get to a bus stop across the estate that I lived in, getting a bus to a train station, getting a train for an hour into London, getting 2 different tube lines, walking out into the city of London, and then walking into a company called Sentry Insurance in Leadenhall Street in the city, and then got to play with computers all day long. And then eventually I lucked out, that company relocated from London to my hometown of Milton Keynes, and I was like, score on that one. I was driving already. And then just basically my career went from that, and sitting in and around other companies, doing different things to them, and, some service type stuff with military and things, and being connected. But it was, for me, it was just rolling along in life. And she'd always be the passenger seat going, hey, don't forget about me. And I'm like, stay hidden, stay hidden. Don't want to risk anything. Don't want to lose the family. Don't want to do this. And so unfortunately, your life rolls around, just like you sort of talk about that proverbial ball gathering moss as it goes downhill, or a snowball because it's coming into winter here, right? We're not going to have snow, I hope, but it gets bigger and bigger, right? Your life around you just amplifies in loudness of people seeing who you are as a successful software executive, right? And the more that you may want to raise your hand and say, this is really me, you can't, because you're going to be peeling away all of that creation that you've made into you seeing him and his success, and then me saying, yeah, but it's really me, and this is who I am. You're going, well, that can't be real. This isn't you. You're dealing with something else. So that ball got bigger and the stress got heavier. That mental anguish got heavy to the point where I knew I had to do something.
Yeah, wow. That's powerful. I can relate on a different level, and that's with mental health, because that's what I felt like I was hiding my whole life. Knowing at a young age that no one wants to see the sad girl. So you got to put on a smiling face. Yeah. You got to be gracious. Don't talk too much, or maybe talk just
enough.
Just enough. Like learning all these things, and I mean, wow, you just put it so beautifully. It's this snowball, and then it was kind of that way for me. Like after the divorce, it just all this stuff had piled up, and you just don't know what to do with it.
Well, I think if we don't think about destigmatizing mental health, that balloon, that ball gets so big that something's going to explode, and that's the problem. And you and I have talked about this before. There is nobody that I know that is not dealing with some kind of mental health issue. Because of finances, with the economy the way it is, and inflation, because of family, because of health, the bad cancer word, or other conditions, dealing with, as I'm dealing with, aging parents, both who are alive, are 86, or dealing with our kids, right? And I have a 10-year-old, and making sure that she's okay with the things that she deals with, because she does have some challenges too. So we're all carrying this stuff. I just view that the world and us as humans, which is what I talk to my teams about, is I see the human in you.
That's right.
Is and can be a much better place if we destigmatize these types of things and have these conversations that it's okay to say I'm not happy, or I'm not good, or I need a hug.
And if you can try and sometimes put yourself in other people's shoes, then it's like our situations are not the same, but we can relate on certain levels. And most people can, if you allow yourself to say, wow, I get that. I get where you were at that point. And so here you are. It's just like this big snowball right now, and you're executive. Were you dating or married?
I'm married.
Okay.
If you're watching, Heather, I'm sorry about this thing. But I pretty much married my first girlfriend. That was it. I'll say I wasn't sure if I was maybe gay, because again, I couldn't really put it on there, right? That's what it was. I knew because when I was 13, going through that puberty, I'd seen a newspaper article that said, sex change tennis player Renee Richards. So, Google Renee Richards and what she did. So that's when the light bulb moment went off with me going, that's me. I can identify with that, but I can't do anything because I'm going to lose the love of my parents and my family and stuff. And so suck it up, push it down, and continue to move forward. But I dated. We got married when I think I was 24, she was 25. We'd been dating since, I remember sitting in a pub. I was 16, she was maybe 18. She just turned 18 for her birthday. She thought I was much older. I was like, no, I'm still at school. And she was like, right, this type of thing. But we dated, we lived together, and then I got a job opportunity in the States. So it wasn't a great proposal. It was, hey, I've got a job opportunity in the States. If you want to go, we need to get married. And it was like, okay, well, we'll get married, and that was it. I love her and I care about her to this day. She's the mother of my eldest child, Hannah. And we had a lot of good times, but I was also aware that I was hiding a lot of things and I was suppressing it. But what I did was the energy to suppress was put into overwork, huge amounts of travel, right? Being on the road 250 days of the year, traveling globally for a multi-billion-dollar software company, running a global organization, doing all the things to mask and to make everybody else see that life is great. But she was. I mean, we obviously got divorced since then. I came out to her, and she didn't want to be a part of it and left and took Hannah, who was then a child, back to the UK. But that wasn't until I started my transition in 2004. So there's a bunch of things that happened before then that led to me saying I need to do something. So.
And what was that? Can you go through the steps with us of what that looked like?
Yeah, it's the proverbial I turned 40 type thing. But before that, it really was 9/11. It was living in New York, being in the city, losing 4 friends in the towers, and dealing not only with the day of, but the many days after of could have been me, why him, right? I remember one of them was a young kid called Kevin Jones. I think he was either 24 or 26. He was about to get married. His mother was the teacher for my daughter, and she was 8 or 9 in school. And so realizing that people can have their lives snapped like that, from a car outside hitting you to a heart attack and a whole bunch of things, but here you have 2 buildings. And you go through that, you go through the hell of it, and you lose people that you know. And mine was, what if there was a opportunity for them? They know they're going to have their lives ended, but there was a bit of grace, and somebody said, we're going to give you 20 seconds to make one phone call to whomever you want. And they had that chance, but what would they do? Would they call somebody and say, hey, Julie, I just want to apologize, or Julie, I want to tell you I love you, or Julie, the code for the safe is this, right? Or whatever it is, right? But if people could get a chance in life to say something to a loved one, or to apologize for a mistake they made or an argument that they had that has been festering inside, what would it be? And so for me, it was like, I'm living this lie. I'm living a lie where everybody thinks life is great. I'm a senior exec. I'm a senior vice president. I'm enjoying this thing. My then wife, I remember she and Hannah, my eldest daughter, flew Concorde one time to go back to London, right? And by the time I dropped them off at JFK, and I got back to my house in Long Island, out towards the Hamptons, they were pretty much about to land in London, right? It was that 3.5-hour flight. So all this world that was around me, the views that you would have had at that time of him, you thought was real, you thought was reality, you thought was truth, and I'm living this lie. I am putting on the greatest acting, the greatest Oscar ever goes to, but I'm dying inside. And now 9/11's happened, and there are people that don't get a chance to say something. I've got to go do something. I've got to actually stand up and say, I'm here. She's got to stand up and say, I'm here. Don't forget about me. And so I did a lot of soul searching, trying to figure that out. And that's technically what got me to come to Texas. I resigned from the position that I was at in a startup company in New York, and then accepted a position to move to Texas for another software company to do a turnaround here. But I still didn't have the guts to be truthful about me, because I was still fearful about losing respect, losing family, losing love, right? And I wasn't ready for it.
Did you ever worry about losing your job?
Totally. Yeah, 100%. Trans people, even today, are woefully unemployed, over experienced and qualified, but woefully underemployed in today's society. I still worry about that, right? I still worry about, if something was to happen, would I be able to find a job and do it? But I did. That wasn't the primary or even the tertiary concern about losing my job. It was more about losing love, and about losing family and losing respect. And respect not just in terms of the friends I've got, but the industry I'm in. I was known to the media, right? sure stuff may still be out there, right? But CNBC and CNN and all these things that I go on and talk about tech, or keynoting conferences and events, right? And talking about technology and the value and the benefit and what it does for you and stuff. Losing all of that. So I pulled her back and I pushed her back down, and I moved to Texas, built a house. My wife and daughter moved out here, and then the company I was at, myself and another good friend, David Williams, who I'd worked with at a couple of different companies prior to being here in Texas, we ended up selling the company to another software company. And so the stress and the focus that I had was helping to suppress my identity, and at the same time it was causing my mental health to go crazy, right? Because I was still suppressing her and not dealing. So it's like having these two competing arguments, or devils on the shoulder trying to say things. You can do this. No, I can't. Yes, you can. But if I do, no, you can't, right? You go through this whole thing. And then we sold the company in 2003, and the founders got their money and we got a little bit. And then I stayed with the software company that we sold it to. And I'm not going to say I was cruising in my job and enjoying it, but I was having fun, right? I was defining strategy. That's where I met Worley and stuff. Well, Worley came in a few years after I did, but I was helping define strategy for the company and new business segments. And, I was traveling the world and doing the things that I love to do. And then she raised her hand and she said, "Remember 9/11? What if you had that 20 seconds to go say something?" And I started on that journey. I found a therapist. I found an endocrinologist, right? I had my letters. I did it the right way. I followed standards of care, and I came to a crossroads that I can do something, or I can decide not to do something. I hadn't told my wife. I'd only talked to my therapist. None of my friends knew, right? And if we go back to that conversation about friends, right? In some of my speeches, I talk about if you take your thumb and a finger and you just create a little bit of hole so you can see light, right? I see white light, I see white wall, more of a pearl color. I see you. I'm keeping you at bay. I'm not letting you close. But if I bring that towards my eye, right? You just blinked, you just moved your jaw now, right? You're coming too close. You're going to find out more about me. So I kept everybody at a distance. And I got to the stage where I said, I've got to do something about this. I'm at a crossroads. Two options. I can turn right, or whatever direction, and be authentic and accept Meghan, and deal with all the crap that's going to come through with it. To your point, loss of job, loss of income, loss of housing, loss of marriage, loss of daughter, loss of family, loss, but be me. Or I could take another approach, and it wasn't to stay him. And I found myself one night at the Academy Outdoor Sports with my Glock, ready to end my life. And at that point in time, it was very, very clear to me that that was the right option. I had not left a note. I didn't believe that leaving a suicide note was valuable. It would cause others to think and consider and have pain just as much as me ending my life would. And the way that I describe it and my thought process, having gone through all the pros and cons and the must-haves, can't-stands, all the lists in my head, was if you've ever been in a room that is white walls, white floor, and a white ceiling, and it's lit, just like we have the lighting here, you can't make out where those joints are. And for me, that's what it was. It was just very logical. It was very clear. It was very correct that this was my option that I had to go.
Was it to save you from feeling any more pain, or to save those around you?
I think it was...
Or neither?
I don't think it was either. I think for me, that was the option that I was going to do because I was done. Society hates people like me. They don't like trans people. They find trans people as being other and different, right? And irky, right? You know, back in the 90s, TV sitcoms would put them as prostitutes or dead bodies in their things, right? Or drug addicts. Hasn't changed too much. There was no icons, right? There was Renee Richards that I mentioned. There was Tula, Carolyn Cossey, who I remember reading a book on. She was one of Bond's, the Bond girls. I can't remember the movie, I think it's Live and Let Die, but there's a pair of legs with Bond underneath with a gun on the front of the movie. It's a poster, and those are her legs. She's trans, right? But there was very few people. There's no, as we have it today with, Janet Mock, Laverne Cox, Angelica Ross, right? There was no, I hate to say it, Caitlyn Jenner's, right, of this world out there. So you had no real luminary people that you could look to and say it's going to be okay.
Right.
Right? And so you're navigating this world that doesn't have a roadmap. It doesn't have a book. It doesn't have textbooks that you could go, okay, if I do A through Z, then this is going to happen. Life's going to be good. Right? You're trying to navigate the system by yourself. And I felt that suicide was the right thing to do because people will remember him as being a successful software executive, right? And done all these different things in his life, as being pretty generous and philanthropic and helping, loving, right? Overly loving and caring for family. But I was dying.
Did you feel like the fear had just taken over? I would love to understand more about what it feels like in that moment to get to that point.
I think the not the fear, but the resistance against people like me was there, right? And so for me, it was
not
like
being loved or accepted.
yeah, and the other thing on the other side with my list of lose was I had also put myself into the mind frame, if I can borrow your hand, that I'd never feel this again. That feeling of human contact, of skin, right? I said, look, if I can be Meghan and never feel the love of somebody again, never feel skin again, that's okay. Yeah, I've been a senior vice president. Was used to flying like a G4 to meet with Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer at Microsoft and stuff like that. Great. If I have to clean toilets in a motel room for the rest of my life, but I could be with the authentic me, maybe I could be okay with that. I probably wouldn't, but maybe I could. So those are all considerations over there. A list, or just pull the trigger, because your family's going to be okay. And my view of grief, as wrong as it would be to say it, is they will be in mourning for a very deep period of time, and a year later it will be the anniversary, a little bit of mourning. 3 years later, some mourning. 5 years later, maybe it's just a Tuesday, right? And that's what I was like, it's going to be okay for them. They will, as a family that loves each other and it just has a lot of empathy and emotion for each other, it's going to be okay. They're going to get through it.
Which we know, I don't know if you've talked to people about this now. I mean, I've talked to so many people whose family members have taken their lives, and it's doesn't matter how long, they're still so affected by it.
Right.
Yeah.
But in that moment,
You don't.
I wasn't thinking that. I was thinking
That's right.
I was trying to give my answers to my questions that I thought would logically be okay, right? And obviously I didn't pull the trigger,
Yeah,
right?
what took you out of that moment?
I got to like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, just thinking and going back through my lists. And I thought, I'm a good public speaker. I bring heart and emotion, even when I'm talking about technology and what it can do for you. I'm a leader. And I bet there are other people going through exactly what I'm going through right now. So what if I could turn this around and deal with all the crap I'm going to have to deal with? That list, okay, I'm going to lose, I'm going to lose, I'm going to lose. But then take an approach of speaking up and speaking out and saying why this is wrong, and that we trans community people are just like everybody else. We're pilots and judges, which we are. I can name a bunch. Kelly Lepley, if you're out there, UPS pilot, captain, I love your pictures, right? We're all over the place. So let me seize that moment and deal with the bad stuff. I've dealt with other things, 9/11, a whole ton of other stuff. Let me go deal with it. And no matter how bad it's going to be, as the military says, you're going to suck it up. So I'm going to suck it up. But instead of suppressing Meghan, she's going to be leading. And she's going to be out here, right? And I'm going to go through that. I'm going to deal with people looking at me differently because I look different maybe before surgery, hopefully.